on to the NFL stuff. We got some news with the franchise tag players. So only two players were franchise tagged: T Higgins at 26.2 mil and Trey Smith at 23.4 mil. Now, this is the fewest amount of players franchise tagged since 1994. We really usually get much more motion around this time, but it has not happened. Some other players that were going to get franchise tagged but ended up getting contracts. Osa Odigizua from the Cowboys got a 4-year, $80 million deal with $58 million guaranteed. Not franchise tag, obviously, but Saquon Barkley just restructured his deal, 2-year extension with the Eagles for 41.2 mil with 36 million guaranteed. Sam Darnold not tagged, and Devontae Adams got released by the Jets, so they free up some cap space. And the Rams traded Jonah Jackson to the Bears for a 6th-round pick. Which one of these moves do you think was the biggest, or that you want to talk about the most?
Well, I'll start because Lombardi. Champions start first. The biggest, obviously, and the best move is the most important move, and that's the best running back in NFL history getting a little bit of an extension. Now, well-deserved money, 41.2 million is what you said, if I'm not mistaken. Whatever it was, great money, definitely well-deserved. Puts him at the top of the running back market. Coming off a career year, I'm excited to see how Howie attacks this offseason and maybe lessening the load for Saquon or making it more balanced in terms of the passing game being better and the run game. Because Saquon, after I want to say the bye week or after like week 3, started to get a lot of touches. You know, we saw Tampa game, he didn't get a ton of touches. The Saints game he did, but they didn't really gear him up until like after the bye, and he did really well. So I'm excited to see how Saquon does. Tegan released. It saved you guys a ton of money. And realistically, him and Aaron Rodgers is probably gone. Tate's probably going to leave too. And listen, you need those old veterans out of there, those guys that have any ties to Aaron Rodgers. I saw Lazard. You told him he can go seek for a trade too. Yeah, so look, any ties to Aaron Rodgers, you want out the building. I respect it. You want to just get all the bad vibes or just anything that warrants last year. If it's not a high-level young player, you want it gone. And I respect that. T. Higgins getting tagged. Me, Joel, and Drew have been back and forth on this. Joel is very adamant on T. Higgins re-signing. I just don't know. I just don't feel like a tag doesn't make me comfortable about you getting re-signed. It really doesn't. It just gives me the vibe. Like, tag screams to me, especially after a career year in which you got tagged the year before, we still can't find the money for you, or we still can't find a number for you. So we're going to tag you and keep you here, which screams to me T. Higgins might ask for a trade. We saw on Twitter, or was it Instagram, he tweeted tag. So he with a dot at the end. We know how petty shit goes. When you put that dot at the end, that means something is brewing. So I don't know. I'm not fully optimistic about T. Higgins staying. Jamar Chase also posted like a meme of what Joe Burrow was saying. Remember what Joe Burrow was like, Harry Roseman could do it. Let's get it done. He'll do what he needs to do. I'm really not optimistic on T. Higgins staying, man. I feel like there's a lot of teams that can want his talent. There's a lot of teams that'll break the bank for him. There's a lot of teams that'll send capital for him. And I think Cincinnati could be looking at trading him for maybe finessing the team for a first-round pick and drafting another wide receiver or a second-round pick, maybe getting a guy like Bolden or Isaiah Bond, somebody like that. I'm really not optimistic about T. Higgins staying with Cincinnati. And if he does end up leaving, that really puts a monkey wrench into the situation of Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. You still haven't given Jamar Chase his money. I don't know why it's taken so long. Maybe because they can't pay him yet. I don't know how that works. But Jamar Chase should have got his money the moment you realized you wasn't making the playoffs, which was after week 18 or whatever it was. That's the day he should have got his money. But T. Higgins, I'm not too optimistic on him staying.
Yeah, I would have got booty butt naked for T. Higgins on the Denver Broncos. So it's a huge bummer that
he do that.
I might if we go and we bring him to the team. Oh, you're just saying you want me to dance for you? I could do that. That being said, yo, I'll do something for some money. I say that. Let me do that. That being said, T. Higgins getting tagged was corny. He was supposed to be the hot name on the free agent market, and him getting tagged is a giant blue ball. Now the nice name on the free agent market obviously is going to be Devontae Adams. That's definitely intriguing. I'm not going to say it's not, but T. Higgins is the young free agent sexy name, 26 years old, was going to go out there and command $25 to $30 million every single year. The tag obviously being for $25 million. T Higgins is not going to be upset at that, but he does want a long-term contract. And this year, similar to how we saw in years past with other players, like Lamar Jackson, in my opinion, that you have a minor injury, and instead of playing through it, because you do have your long-term contract, you're more willing to risk your body a little bit more. With minor injuries that we saw from T Higgins, he sat this year. He missed 5 games. And if it was anything minor, you weren't seeing T Higgins on that football field. But when he was on that football field, Lord knows that he was the best version of himself. This was, in my opinion, the best T Higgins that we've seen. So I thought we were going to see him get a contract, whether it was with the Bengals or with another team. To see him getting tagged was definitely a bummer. Now, on the opposite side of a player not getting tagged is Chris Godwin. That shocked me. I thought all I've read this offseason was that they were going to tag Chris Godwin. He was going to be one of those guys that did receive it, but him not getting the tag, hey, come on home. That would be excellent for what the Denver Broncos are trying to do, a guy that can separate. I know he is coming off a torn ACL, but Chris Godwin was amazing before getting injured last season. This is something that he's been through already, or not torn ACL, excuse me.
I think it was an ankle injury.
Broken ankle. Thank you very much. He obviously does have the history of the torn ACL a couple of seasons ago, did break his ankle this past year. It's something that's going to be interesting to see how he comes back from, but I'd be looking and be interested very much so in bringing Chris Godwin aboard. And I know a lot of other teams would love Chris Godwin to the service. The Commanders, I think, took themselves out of the race for a couple of these free agent wide receivers, especially the bigger names after trading for Deebo Samuel. But I look at the Packers. The Packers could use a guy like Chris Godwin, a guy with for sure hands, great route running, great separation. You can look at the Buffalo Bills. Josh Allen getting a nice safety blanket. Wouldn't be surprised if he was one of those guys. Lamar Jackson could use a wide receiver boost. You go and you bring in, I think I like Rashad Bateman a lot. I like Zay Flowers a lot, but you need something for sure. Chris Godwin is that type of guy. Interested to see the type of money that he commands in free agency. But that shocked me. I thought that he was going to come back paired alongside Mike Evans, but it showed how much faith they have in the rookie McMillan.
Yeah, I would be pretty surprised, honestly, if T Higgins is on the Bengals long term. It's just everything they've kind of done throughout their franchise's history. And now that you have Joe Burrow, maybe that changes because you feel like you have a real chance to win a Super Bowl every single season. And when you had, Andy Dalton and Carson Palmer, you probably didn't feel like you had that level of confidence in the quarterback play. But the ownership right now for Cincy is just pretty poor in terms of owners. Like, obviously, he's worth like hundreds of millions of dollars, but he is still the poorest owner amongst all of the other NFL owners. So when you're giving out these contracts, we only really ever talk about salary cap and how it impacts the cap, but you also have to put that money in an escrow. So like when you give out $100 million guaranteed, like that $100 million is coming out of the owner's pockets. So I don't know if you have to pay Jamar Chase, you're paying Joe Burrow. Is it worth it to pay T Higgins? He's a great player. I think he showed this year at his peak, he could be a borderline top 10 receiver in the NFL. But when I look at the Bengals, they have so many holes that if you're paying Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow, and T Higgins, that doesn't automatically mean you're going to a Super Bowl, right? Like this is a team that still has to compete in this division with the Baltimore Ravens, who have shown year in and year out without receivers that they could be amongst the best teams in the AFC, let alone the AFC North. The Steelers we're not as worried about just because quarterback, but they're probably going to win fucking 10 games every year for the rest of our lives. And the Browns are a bit of a mess right now. But just because you're paying T Higgins and bringing him back, the main thing it does is it settles down Joe Burrow, I think, that if you don't bring back his buddy, what happens a year from now? What happens 2 years from now? If you miss the playoffs or God forbid Burrow gets injured again or something happens to Jamar Chase, there's a chance that he's looking for another team. I think that's kind of the biggest question you have right now if you don't pay T Higgins is what is the effect on Joe Burrow and his long-term outlook on the Bengals if he knows ownership is not going to do everything they can to pay their star players. But from a football perspective, I don't hate moving on from T Higgins, right? Like I said, peak for peak, he could be a top 10 guy. He's also someone the last 2 years has dealt with injuries. He's dealt with injuries really his whole career, but these last 2 seasons, he's missed, I think, 10 games combined. And you have Jamar Chase. You have someone that is a bona fide top 2 wide receiver in football. And as Joel loves to mention, when T Higgins is off the field, not much changes for the Cincinnati Bengals or Jamar Chase for that matter, right? As long as Burrow has one of them, they're going to be a high-level offense. If I'm Cincinnati, I need to look at how do I improve my offensive line? how do I improve my running game, and how do I improve my defense? With Joe Burrow, you just have such a high floor that if you have Chase out there, you can have a middling wide receiver 2 and middling wide receiver 3 and still be a really prolific passing offense just because of how great Joe Burrow is. So from a football perspective, I would not mind saving that salary cap space and getting extra draft capital. I got to hit on those draft picks, which the Bengals have been a bit hit or miss on throughout their history. But I don't think it's the worst move in the world to move off T Higgins.